She's still laughing.
That's so funny. Welcome to 5 Lemons Left. We're the real stuff, the lemons making lemonade. So pucker up, because we're going to be discussing our life's lessons and the nitty-gritty details of our spiritual journeys.
Hey y'all, I'm Amanda.
And I'm Drusilla.
I'm Melissa.
Hello, this is Morgan.
And I'm Penny. Welcome to our podcast today.
Welcome to the 5 Lemons Laughing. Thank you all so much for being here today. We are here and missing one of our lemonettes. Melissa is on vacation in London. Hi, we miss you.
And she's with her mother.
Mm-hmm. Yes, with her mother on vacation for Thanksgiving. But we have a special guest today filling in. So we have a substitute lemonette, K.E. Garland. Kathy Garland is with us today.
Welcome, Kathy.
Welcome, Kathy.
Thank you.
So Kathy is she's a new author, and her book is called In Search of a Salve, and a memoir of a sex addict. So Kathy and I met a couple years ago while she was on vacation with her husband, and I was on vacation with my husband in Panama, Central America. And we just eyed each other from afar until we could figure out the level of comfort in going over and speaking with her and her husband. So somehow we connected, and it was a great conversation. And so we decided to have breakfast and to hang out a couple of times while we were there. And so it's been 2 years of she and I keeping in touch and communicating back and forth. And wow, I'm so excited to have her here and talk about her new book. It's so amazingly written. Mm-hmm. I knew upon meeting her that she was a writer and that she has a lot of other things going on, but I'll let her tell you about that. But also she told me that she was writing a story about her life, but she didn't tell me what it was about. She didn't tell me really anything about it. So when through social media, I was privy to the book coming, I think maybe 2 or 3 months in advance, and was so excited to finally get a copy or actually listen to it on Audible. And I was floored. My husband was telling Kathy that every time he walked in the room and I was listening to it, I was like, listening to this. Not stop listening. Oh my goodness. So we are excited to have her here today. And we have tons of questions for you, Kathy. But I do want to let you go ahead and introduce yourself and, tell us about your journey to getting this book done.
Okay. Thank you, Drew. And thank you. I'm super excited to be a substitute lemonette. So thank you for having me here today. And thank you for allowing me the space and holding the space for me to have this conversation with you. So a little bit about myself. Let me see. I'm actually an associate professor of education. That's how I make money to pay my bills, is what I tell people. However, around 2014, and the book shows this, I think, too, I had this revelation by submitting an essay to an online forum specifically for Black women. I had this revelation that I was supposed to be a writer, that somehow I had gone, sometimes we think like we went down the wrong path. Of course, there's no wrong path. But at the time I was thinking, oh no, I spent all this time getting all these degrees in education and spending time teaching people when I just was supposed to be a writer. So that kind of kicked off my author journey and writer journey. I started blogging from there. I had a book actually that I created, which was a book of quotes. It's out there now. I mean, you can get it if you want, but I don't highly recommend it. It was when I was like super gung ho, like, oh, I'm going to be this writer. So I do this book of quotes. It's called Quoted, Kwoted. And I thought I'm like, oh, I'm going to like, everybody's going to be quoting me and saying all these quotes. And that didn't happen. I think like my cousin bought this book and he was super excited and a couple of friends. And I was like, okay, maybe that wasn't it. So then I wrote a book called The Unhappy Wife, which is actually an anthology where I interviewed 11 women who were self-described as being unhappy and delved into their stories. But because they were afraid for people to know who they were, I fictionalized all of the stories. But the stories themselves are true. And I also have a story in that book. So that one did a little bit better. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe this is kind of like my wheelhouse where I should be. I followed that up with a book called Daddy, Reflections of Father-Daughter Relationships. And it's still an anthology, but with that book, The Unhappy Wife kind of stressed me out a bit because what I found, those women had never told anyone these stories. And the stories were super deep, super traumatic. It was just a lot. And so I thought, well, maybe if I can get other people to tell their stories, to just write it, and I can just edit the collection, right? So that worked out, not as well as The Unhappy Wife. For some reason, the energy around it was a little different. I think we're willing to talk about like our romantic relationships, but when we get in the weeds of those parental relationships, it's a bit much for people. So I the whole time though, I'm writing this book, the one that Drew mentioned. The whole time I'm trying to figure out how to put this story together. And I just recently realized, actually, as I've been talking to people, that The Unhappy Wife, the Daddy book, because all of those pieces are in this book too, was really me like trying to figure out how to tell this story, which ended up being just my story, no one else. I had to write it. The things that I was saying about other women with their husbands and with their fathers, I had to figure out a way to write this story. And within the context of something that I absolutely did not plan on sharing, which was the sex addiction piece. So that's kind of like who I am and how I got to be here. I'm also still currently married. And I say currently, I laugh, and it's kind of funny, not funny. But as of today, I am still married. And I have 2 young adult daughters, 24 and 22. So that's me.
Wonderful. I can imagine like our platform and how we all met. Most of our viewers know that the Lemonettes all met through a spiritual community. And so I can just imagine, and I can hear it. I can hear the rhythm, the up and downs in the book as well. Can you talk to us a little bit about your journey? I know I listened to a part of another platform that you were on. I listened to it on social media, and I heard you mention religion growing up, on how that impacted you. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So I haven't figured out a way to describe what I'm going to describe because I haven't like practiced or anything. So I want to say ahead of time, my intent is never to disregard or disrespect anyone's religious belief. So I'll say that first. But growing up, and I do show this in the book. So my mother had a terminal illness. And in my mind, she never told me this, but in my mind, I felt like she had this bucket list because she knew she was going to die. And on it, I think was she needs to go get right with God, right? Like whatever that means. So around 12 years old, we go to church. We had not been doing that before. We kind of like, went for Christmas and Easter and all of that, but we really hadn't gone to church. And we don't just go to church. He becomes the Sunday school teacher. My dad becomes the youth pastor, very loose quotes there. But we're like all about it. And what she would do is to prepare for her lessons, she would, ask me these questions the night before. So at 12 years old, I'm like analyzing the Bible, right? Which some of my friends have found like incredibly unbelievable. But I was like, yeah, that's what I was doing. Like she's like practicing on me. The thing is, if we move forward, and I don't want to spoil the book for anyone who hasn't read it, who might be listening, but as we move forward, there's some trauma. And my father and his new girlfriend kind of use religion as a way to solve. They think that there's something wrong with me, and there is. But instead of asking me what's wrong, they use religion to try to solve the problem. So there was that piece, right? And I think it's called an intercession is what they did. I was kind of like ambushed with a surprise intercession, which was a bit much. So at that point, I'm 16 years old. Also during that time, my father's mother, my paternal grandmother, kind of knows like my father and I are having issues. And she would constantly tell me, I would go to her in the book. I kind of just show it as one time, but it was multiple times. I would be like, can you please talk to your son? Because something is not right. And I don't know what's going on here. And she would always tell me that she could do nothing and that I just needed to pray about it. And she was Catholic. So, as a youth, I start to develop these opinions about religion that it's like, I'm just not sure that this is useful for me, especially if you're telling me to just pray about something and nothing is changing, right? And of course, this is like an immature child-like way of viewing that, but that's where we start to develop things. Mm-hmm. So as I go along, there's this other piece to this too. My father would jump like religion hop, whoever he was with. That's what religion he was. So he was raised Catholic by his mother. Then when he married my mother and became Methodist, then he marries again and becomes, I think it was Pentecostal. Then he remarries and he becomes Missionary Baptist. And not only that, then he becomes a deacon. And so even with that, I'm looking at it like, is this how, I don't know. Like, I don't know that you're supposed to be like, I get exploring, but I just wasn't so sure about his faith. So with that, aside from the fact that I'm waiting as a child for like God himself to come descend from the heavens or the sky, and that never happens, then as I start to live life and I'm introduced to other ways of learning about spirituality, I do reject like organized religion. I don't even try to explore any other ones. I realize too that many religions are pretty similar. It's like you swap out God for Allah or swap out this practice for this one. And it's kind of the same, in my opinion. So as I become a young adult, I'm like, this really seems like a little bit made up to me. And whoever, I don't know, I guess however you align yourself, whatever resonates is cool. I get it. We need religion sometimes, I think, to understand what seems to be incomprehensible, right? Like it gives us comfort when we have no comfort. But eventually I just was like, I don't think this is for me. And so I'm a little more spiritual. I know people say this all the time, but I'm a little more spiritual than I am. And I don't want to say little. I am more spiritual than I am invested in organized religion, right? So I do all of the woo-woo things that people think are woo-woo. Meditate, which I know shouldn't be woo-woo, but it's considered that. I meditate. I light incense. I read tarot cards. I talk to birth chart readers, not just, the person who's like, you're a Gemini and this is what this means. No, it's like a whole system that explains all types of things. That has really helped me a lot to live life. For a long time, I would go see mediums. I stopped doing that. But yeah, that's kind of like where I am in the whole spiritual realm.
That's amazing. And just Kathy, just so you know, woo woo is normal here. You're
Okay.
comfortable in this group, right?
All right, good.
Yeah. So what brought you to, I know in the book you talk about a yoga practice and a writing practice. So how did you discover that as a way to, I don't even know. And why did you go looking for it?
So I think the yoga practice, so there were three things. The yoga practice I'd already started doing, and that was years ago. And it was more just like exercise. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know what was going on. So I know in the book, I really explain all the scientific stuff of what happens when you're in specific poses and how it calms you and blah, blah, blah. But at the time, it was just kind of like, oh, let me go try yoga because that seems cool. And I would do it and I would feel a lot better, not understanding why. So that when I end up having this rock bottom moment in the book, it's the first thing I go to because I'm like, I don't know how to calm myself down or how I'm going to act like a regular person at my house. And yoga helped me with that. The meditation part, I'd already kind of been meditating, but not I forgot, it was like a scripted type thing. And at that time, Oprah and Deepak Chopra were like this, besties. I'm sure they still are. But they had created this whole system and this whole catalog of meditations. And because I perceived my issue as being with having relationships, there was a relationship meditation. So I was like, oh, let me do this meditation for relationships. I'm thinking it's going to be do this, do that, do this for your mother, do this for your father. And surprise to me when I learned that the relationship that was most important is with myself. I was like, oh, who knew? So that really, and I don't even want to say, there have been so many things, and I tried to show this in the book that I can't explain, right? How do I find the right meditation that cracks me open? How do I find the right yoga studio where I can, where it's not American trendy, but there's actually asanas that they use the proper names for. I can only say that I was led there, and I know it's really because my heart and spirit knew that's what I needed. That was what was going to work for me. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Were you talking about the 21-day meditation with Oprah?
Yes.
When they actually had the CDs? Did you actually get the CDs? Yes.
I didn't get the CD. but they had it online. So, but it wasn't, of course, like it is now where you might have an app or something like that. So I would use my phone and just get online and sit there and listen. Yeah.
I did all those meditations by Oprah and Deepak too. They were fantastic. Yes.
So you know what yeah.
I do. Absolutely. Actually, Kathy, a lot of it's really interesting how our journeys, I'll speak for myself, but I think it resonates with everybody, how our journeys have kind of paralleled on our seeking. I followed Julia Cameron and The Artist's Way. I've done many of the things. I'm a yoga teacher. I practice pranayama every day. It's just really fascinating how so similar we are in our seeking. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that I was, it just feels good when somebody else writes a book about all the things that they're doing and how it's helping them. And And because sometimes I don't even know, people say, oh, this might help. And I go, okay, I'll try it. And then when I hear that somebody else is doing it and it's helping them as well, then I go, oh, okay, it's probably helping me too. Sometimes I don't really know. Yeah.
Well,
So.
I'm glad you mentioned the artist way too, because I almost didn't read that. A friend of mine suggested it. And at that point, when she suggested it, I was like already publishing, essays here and there and writing all the things and blogging forever. And I was like, this sounds like it's for blocked artists. I'm not a blocked artist. But that book was like just as meaningful as anything else. I was like, oh, I was blocked. Who knew?
Mm.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful book.
Mm-hmm.
Love it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Kathy, could you, sorry.
Go ahead, Morgan, you go.
But you can hear me now, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. So Kathy, oh my gosh, I have quite a few questions. Which one should I start with? Could you speak about the writing as a part of your healing process back when you had your blog and now with the book, and like how that has brought you benefit and healing?
Yeah. So that's a really good question. And I'm still blogging, by the way. I think the blog, I'll start there. The blog, I actually started because a friend of mine was like, well, if you're going to be writing books, then you need to have a blog. So it was supposed to be like this marketing, this marketing tool, right? And that was when I had the Quoted book and I was like, oh, well, great. Which is why the blog is called Quoted. It's quoted.wordpress.com, because I was like, well, yeah, so I'll have this book and I'm going to do the blog. What ended up happening, though, is the blogging community is one of, I think, the last places online that is actually loving and caring. And when I say this, people are like, what are you talking about? Because people can be so ugly and mean on social media, right? It has been like any time that I've mentioned something. So like the blog is the first place that I wrote about being adopted and about being ashamed of being adopted and about how I really felt about my adoptive mother. It was one of the first things that I wrote. And everyone, like all of the people, whoever was there was like, oh, like, what's the big deal? Or, oh, I understand, kind of like me too, because I'm adopted or because I adopted, or they would say, I adopted children. I wonder if they feel like that. So it's been like one of the most compassionate spaces where I can be myself and talk about things that I probably wouldn't talk about, for example, with my family, because they haven't always been like a safe space for me. Or even, and when I say family, I mean like the one that I was raised with. But even in some ways, my marriage has lacked the compassion and understanding that I've needed. And so when I blog, I really get that from them. And also it's not like an offering to, I hate to say the world, but a blog is international. So like to whoever can access it, right? And so along the way, I didn't even realize that's what was happening. I'm like writing about these things. And again, I'm not writing about sex addiction because I was too ashamed to say that. But I'm writing about everything else, right? And every step of the way, it's like, oh, yeah, it's okay. Like you can cry here almost and not be ashamed of anything. And so it really has been a good community for me to heal and to practice writing simultaneously, which again, I had no idea that's what I was doing, but that's exactly what I was doing. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So Penny had mentioned like seeking, though somebody used the word seeking, and what sent you to yoga, meditation, and all that. And in the book, it was, I don't remember where it was. I didn't write that down, but it resonated so deeply with me. Like the need to be quiet. I don't know how you phrased it, but like the noise in your mind, like trying to quiet that, it made me start looking around. Like I have the TV on, I like have my phone on, I have music on, I have the waterfall on, like the noise to comfort myself and I don't know what is all underneath it all the way, but trying to quiet that. I would love for you to talk about that, because whistles started ringing. I'm like, I am definitely a quiet seeker.
Yeah, I have to have complete quiet. So I think you may be talking about at toward the end of the book when COVID happens. And my husband is now permanently home. And I know this is a lot of people's experience, but I had set up my home. So first of all, I sought out a job that I could do basically in my sleep on purpose because I needed to rest. I didn't know at the time, this is like 2015. I didn't know at the time I was burnt out. Because, we don't always have that terminology, but that's exactly what had happened. I was burnt out and I needed to rest, but I still had to make money, right? So I seek this job out. Well, I don't seek it out. It's another one of those things, actually. A colleague is like, do you want a job? And I was like, yes, now. And she gave it to me. So I have this job where I teach online. I have 5 classes. 4 out of the 5 classes are online. And that 5th one is about an hour away and has no more than 10 people any given semester. So there's that part settled. So I'm at home. Then we buy like a new house, 2017. And I'd already kind of set this up where it's like, I would leave when everybody else left to go work out and get my day together. Then I would come back and there's no one here. So it's completely quiet. I'm not a big TV watcher. So I don't need, like some people have to have the TV on for noise. It distracts me. So I'm literally like home for 8 hours with no TV, no radio, no nothing, just me to do and be and listen to myself, right? So I set this up. We get a new house. That's 2017. I purposely want a house with a lot of light because I find out that I need like sun throughout the day. So, just picture it. So I got this comfy job. I have all this time and space where I can do whatever, whenever I feel like it, and then do my job. And then I get to entertain my family when they start filtering back into the house in the evening. But like everyone, then all that stops March 2020. And I'm like, oh no, what am I? This is not okay. But it really and for lack of a better phrase, it really dysregulates me because I can't think because I'm so used to no noise. And not only that, my husband has something he calls Movie Friday, when his job is slow. So Marvel is in the background. My daughter's home doing her whatever. It was just too much. So that's when I realized, even though I had set everything up, that's when I realized, no, I really have to have quiet so I can hear myself. And I just mean, some people say like inner being or your intuition, higher, whoever it is. I was like, I can't hear her because there's too much going on. So that has been a huge part of, I would say, healing too. Being able to have stillness and to slow life down, right? Like you don't always have to be going and doing things. Or if I am, I want to do it at my own pace. I'm not doing it at your pace. And I've been clear about that with everyone. So that has been super helpful. I also, shouldn't be taken for granted. I bought a pair of noise canceling headphones because I have to have a way to like tune out. If all this other stuff is going to be going on, I have to have a way to tune everything out. So, yeah.
Thank you for that journey. Yeah. I remember in the book, it came up right after your mom died, and the noise was like a coping mechanism, right? To drown out quiet. So surrounding yourself with that. And that's just, that's amazing how I would love to hear about that. And it's amazing how you went from a traumatic event, drowning it out. And now you're in your adulthood and you need quiet. I just love that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I wasn't sure if you were talking about that part or not. So after my mom dies, now I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
The quiet was too loud for me at that time, right? And so I didn't realize that I was trying to, I was using noise as a coping mechanism, which I think we do a lot today. Like I see so many people, it's like you can't be quiet or just be with yourself. So just to go backwards then, right. As a teenager, I was like, oh, I can't deal with this. No one's here. My mom's not here. And if she was here, then all this noise would be here, but it was good noise, right? Like her asking me things and her turning on Prince and her turning on the TV, whatever. But once it was just me, I was like, oh no, which kind of is my point with that initial story too, right? Like, because once it's just you, it's you, and you have to feel things. You have to feel whatever it is, whatever comes up, and you have to hear whatever is going on in your brain too. So when I was 16, I would turn on the TV and I would turn on the radio and I would try to have like as much noise as possible so I wouldn't have to feel or think. Yeah. And so I'm so happy I don't have to do that now, because I would rather feel and think than kind of bury it with noise. Yeah.
For our audience, can you speak some about the sex addiction and how you became aware that that's what you were struggling with, and then what the healing journey looked like around that?
Yeah. So let me think. It's hard to pimp. So there's a point where I know in my life, right, that I have a problem with sex, but I'm not calling it like sex addiction. Because again, what I've also been reminding people is like, during this time frame in this book, it's not 2023. It's like 1980s and 1990s and even early aughts, right? Where, anxiety and depression and all those terms are now pretty much common knowledge. And even though we don't talk about sex addiction, the idea of addiction is pretty common, right? Mm-hmm. So at the time, as I'm growing up and growing into womanhood, I just know, like, so first I go through this iteration where I'm like, oh, I just like sex, just whatever. I just have a high sex drive. I think back in the day, people used to call people like nymphomaniacs or something like that, which doesn't sound nice rolling off my tongue right now. But that's what we did, right? And other terms, which I show in the book. Eventually, you get branded all these labels. So that's fine until I get married. And then when I get married, I'm like, oh no, something is amiss. But still I'm hanging on to the idea that I just like sex and just, of course we have these cultural norms, these social norms. So like, what am I going to do? Tell my husband, oh, I just like sex a lot and I need to go have sex outside of this marriage? No, I do basically what quite a few sex addicts do. And, you end up lying to people and cheating and maintaining a lot of relationships outside of your marriage. but still like I'm not using that language until I think it was like Eric Benet and Halle Berry. And there was another famous person where the terminology came out. But it's like even today, it's like a big laugh, right? Like, oh, haha, you're a sex addict. Sure. Like, how can you be addicted to that? Right. So as far as the journey goes, it's around that time. And there's another incident that I have that I outline in the book where even my husband is like, girl, you got a problem. And sex is the problem. But still, like, again, because it's like not 2023, we're both like, well, okay, all right, sure. So I don't do anything. I think that's when I take like this online quiz, right? And try to figure it out. And it's like flashing lights, like, you are a sex addict. And still I'm like, I don't know what to do with that information. So it wasn't until later, after I again have this rock bottom moment, that I'm really like, I have to figure this out because I am a whole professor with a preteen, a teenager. I've been married all this time. I've done what I perceive to be this terrible thing. Now I really got to figure it out. So it wasn't until then that I really started like looking into things like, okay, could it be this? And I go through all this list, right? Oh, I'm just codependent. Well, yeah, you can be codependent, but not a sex addict.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's because I was adopted and adoptees have this subset of issues. Yeah, but still you didn't have to become a sex addict. Oh, it's because I had whatever. So it wasn't until I was writing this book, really, and I want to say toward the end, because I started writing it in 2014 and had all these iterations, but it wasn't until I started seeking someone to help me like publish it. And that person was like, you're going to have to qualify some of this. And I'm like, oh, because I really didn't want to write a book where I had to qualify anything, right? I just wanted the story to be the story. And I wanted, somebody like you, Morgan, to pick it up and be like, oh, clearly she had a problem. But once she told me that, then I really started digging deeper into what the issues could be. And that's when I came across Gabor Mate. He talks a lot about trauma, and he talks about how it is linked to addiction, no matter what type of unresolved trauma, usually childhood though, and no matter what type of addiction. And he does a really good job of explaining how unresolved childhood trauma leads people to addiction. He basically says he has not encountered a person with an addiction who doesn't have some type of unresolved trauma. And that's when like a light bulb went off and I was like, oh, this is what happened, because I don't just have one trauma that I endured. I have several, and back to back to back, with no processing. So that's how I kind of again, it comes back to the writing, right? Like that's how, if it weren't for me having to wanting to be able to explain it to a larger audience than me, I'm not sure I would have come across that, to be able to say like, okay, this is how all these pieces fit together to create a sex addiction. Yeah. I hope that answers.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Okay.
How do you feel? I'm sorry, I'm formulating my questions on the fly, but how do you feel at this stage in the game about your, like, where you are now? And like, it sounds like the term sex addiction was very helpful for you when you came across it and like were able to say like, okay, this is what's going on with me. Is that label still helpful to you now? Or do you like, how are you? I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to ask, but tell me about where you are now in your healing journey.
Yeah. So the label, I'm getting to the point, and I understand this now. Like Gen Z is really big on no labels almost, because they just want to be just whatever. And I get it. That's not a dig at Gen Z. I totally get it. And so that's kind of like where I am now, is like, I get that we have to label things so that we can know what the issue is, but I wish that it could just be I was a person who had unresolved trauma and brought harm to myself, really, and others, right? But I get it, like we have to name things. So to the point, we were like really close to publication, and I reached out and I said, do we have to have Sex Addict on the book? And she was basically like, yeah, because we're trying to sell books. But but also she's like, yeah, like it's okay. So it took a while, right, for me to be able to say it out loud, because I kind of would be like, people are like, what's the title of the book? And I'm like, oh, yeah, In Search of a Salve. And so now, but now, like after because you kind of have to take some ownership, right? So now I'm able to say it, but I also know that it doesn't like necessarily have to define my entire existence. It has also been helpful to kind of like now I can see when I'm being careful about how I say this. So I'm not spiraled back into sex addiction, but what can happen is I can experience anxiety sometimes, and then I start seeing like the steps, right? Like, oh, if I don't stop and feel this thing, then this might happen. And so I'm able to stop myself so that I don't even get to like step 2, right, of the spiraling. Or sometimes I've just said, I was like, oh, I can feel myself spiraling. Like I need a minute. I had a family situation recently with my biological family this summer. And I remember telling my husband, I was like, I've had enough. I'm going back to the hotel. So things like that are important though, right? So that hopefully I'm answering your question. Like that's where I am is sure, I know what it's called, but it's more important to know when I'm being triggered. It's more important to know when I'm feeling a little wonky and I just need to like take a break or go to bed or whatever the case may be. Yeah, that to me, that's the most important thing.
That's so helpful for everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, we all like, yes. Because I mean, no matter how we see it, it's like a perfect example of the healing is in the awareness. Just being aware. That's all. That's all it takes. It's just being aware and willing to listen to yourself. Right. To those triggers.
Yeah, like to go back to Amanda. I'm sorry. I just want to tie this back. Yeah, to go back to what Amanda was saying too. So it's being aware enough not to turn on the TV and the radio at the same time to know that you have some other tools you can use. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I struggle with using food at times to calm down my anxiety, and I'm working on it. It's not 100%, but I'm curious as to what you could share with our listeners that may help them when they're struggling with their own anxiety or, challenges that are going on for them, and how, what are some of the tools that you actually use that might help them?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. So especially given today where I think medication is so like overused for a lot of things. So the first thing for me, especially with anxiety, is to be able to like feel. That's the first thing, because in my life, what I did so much like not feeling that sometimes I didn't even know what was happening. So for me, the result is like crying. I get overwhelmed very easily, and then it results in tears. And sometimes it's me looking around like, I don't know what's going on. And also the people around me are kind of like freaking out, like, what happened? So it took a minute for me to learn not only like, oh, this is a feeling, but then also like naming what the feeling is, and then allowing it to be whatever that is. So, maybe I'm nervous because I have to come on this podcast. That's just an example. I wasn't nervous, but, maybe I'm nervous, but so what a psychology professor friend of mine taught me I would be like, oh, I'm having like this feeling in my stomach. And she was like, well, what does it feel like? And I said, it feels like blah. So she's like, oh, she said, yeah, you're like stressed. And I was like, well, what do I? And she's like, yeah, you first have to like feel it, name it, and now move through. Usually when I move through, like it's not going to last the whole day. But if I suppress, then that's when it lasts the entire day. And I'm ruminating and I'm bugging, my husband about whatever thing that happened over and over and over again. And he's like, why are you still talking about this thing? But if I actually sit with it, then it kind of dissipates. Now, sometimes things are a little too much. Like that's not, like if it's just a podcast appearance, then I can do that, right? But if it's like, real example, meeting with my biological family for whatever, then I have to do more. I'm a huge advocate for journaling. So still naming the emotion, like maybe I'm nervous because I have to go meet with my biological father and I haven't talked to him in 2 years, but now I'm at this graduation. What do I do? So journaling helps with that. So I can actually make it concrete and get it out there and let that go. Sometimes I go journal and I forgot what it's called. It might be purging or something like that. But sometimes I like set the thing on fire. I find someplace safe to do that. Yeah. So that you can physically watch whatever dissipate. In general, there are other things. I know I talked about medication, but there's a supplement that's amazing. It's called ashwagandha. And I don't know if any of you ladies have heard of it, but see nodding. So yeah, I took some by accident. I ordered a probiotic and it had ashwagandha in there, but on the bottle, it just says something like probiotic plus mood or something like that. And I was like, sure, I'm moody. I'll take this. But when I took it, there was an incident. I won't share the whole thing, but basically there was an incident where I was supposed to be more stressed than I really was. And I was like, why am I so calm? I shouldn't be this calm. And it was the ashwagandha. So you can buy it in a tea. It's just a root. My youngest daughter is an organic farmer. She actually like ground some up and put it in a powder for me. So I would say that that's a really safe like supplement to take, but I'm not like a medical doctor. So of course, do that at your own risk. Meditating helps a lot. Incense, because I think it's something to do with smelling things. Like sometimes smelling certain scents can calm you down. And I want to say there was one more thing. I don't know. Hopefully that's enough.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's your favorite incense?
I like things that smell like the woods and grass. So I really like sage, not the sage that is a big bush looking thing, but the actual incense sage. Patchouli, I really, really like. And there's a coconut, but you can't, like, all coconuts are not equal. So yeah.
As someone who lives in Costa Rica, I can verify that is true.
I know we're getting close to the end of our time, but I wouldn't want to end the segment without you, Kathy, at least mentioning your husband and his role in your journey and your healing. Anything you'd like to share about that?
Yeah, I really like how you asked that question. Because of course people are not only concerned, but curious, I would say. And so I would expect nothing less from this group, but I really have to say that I really like the respectful way that you just asked that question, because it has not always been a respectful question that people have asked. So I will say, I think I want to start with in the dedication in the book, I think I say something like our relationship is inexplicable or something like that. And it really is. So when we talk about spirituality, I just feel like our relationship is an example of things that of spiritual practices that we oftentimes talk about, right? So if we're talking about love, like what is love? Grace, what does it mean to give someone grace? Because it's really easy to say that we love someone or that, sure, I would give you grace until you have to actually do it. So I would say that the relationship I have with my husband is an excellent life practice for the both of us. Of course, because you'll see in the book, for anyone who hasn't read it or gotten to the end, that this is the unique part about this book is that it's real time, right? It's not like other memoirs that might end 10 years ago. It ends 2021, which is when I had to reveal to him some things that he didn't know that were super hurtful, to say the least. So he's had to process, and we've had some like ups and downs. It's been challenging. Since the book has come out, I think he has seen that people have been more supportive and understanding and compassionate than I think he thought they would be. No one has said anything disrespectful toward him or me. And so I think that's been helpful for him so that he can see like it's okay. Like it's okay to tell the truth. It's okay for other people to know the whole truth. Because I think that's been some of the angst on his part.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like, I mean, because it's one thing if it was just, I confess all of the things to him and it's just between the two of us, right? It's a whole nother thing when your wife writes a book about it and other people can read it. So, but I think that has helped him to see that people are kind of like, oh man, like that is love. That really, that's what people have been saying. Like, oh, like this is how you love someone. So yeah, that's kind of where we are.
Mm.
Yeah.
I'm really curious about your daughters too. Like, how do they handle all this?
So anyone who has children know that they are different, and my two daughters are the same, right? My youngest daughter, at the time she was living here, and this is just like a couple months ago, but we see the truck coming with the books, and we're like in the window, and she's like, "Where's my book? I can't wait to read it." So, and she's telling all her friends about it. They need to read the book because they got issues, and this is going to help you, and blah blah blah. And she reads the whole thing in about 4 days, and then she comes over with a list of her 22 questions on a Friday that she has for me. And we talk for an hour and a half, and it is beautiful. And it is not what I thought at all. She's not like, "Mama, what were you doing on?" No, it wasn't like that. It was like, oh, like, what does it mean to be a woman? What does it mean to lose your virginity in a certain way? Yeah, it was a very deep conversation. And I would really say that we're probably closer now because of that conversation. Yeah. My oldest daughter, when I told her about the book, I told both of them, I can either give you some bullet points and you can decide, or you can just enter the book. And so my oldest daughter's like, okay, give me the bullet points. So I give it to him. And she's like, "Mom, I'm not reading that. I don't want to know any of that." I was like, okay, well, it's your choice. I'm still giving you a book. And I told her because I think it's really important that, like, sometimes we don't always have the opportunity to know who our parents were. Mm-hmm. But I firmly believe that if we had some understanding, maybe not to the level of this book, that you would understand yourself better and your patterns of behavior. Mm-hmm. So I told her something like that. And she was like, "Got it. Sure." So I gave her the book. As of, I don't know, like last week or so, she said that she was going to begin. So we'll see. But that's where they both are. It's literally a journey.
I see your whole book as I think it would be really helpful for your daughters to understand more about you and your journey. And it actually helps them understand their life too. So I think when we
totally
can
agree.
be vulnerable and share honestly what's going on with us, I think that just creates, like with your younger daughter, that intimacy that sometimes doesn't get created. And so that's really beautiful.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think we're getting close to time to wrap it up. Thank you so much, Kathy. I think we can all agree that we're all addicts or have been addicts about something in our lives. So, sex is just something that's more stigmatized, So we appreciate your honesty, your openness, your, oh my gosh, boldness. You're willing to, basically sacrifice a lot of things for the healing of yourself and other people. It's amazing.
Thank you.
And anything else anybody want to add before Morgan takes us home?
I want to see what Penny's Post-its are.
Yeah, I have a couple.
Yeah.
I mean, this is nothing new, but unresolved childhood trauma leads to addiction. I love that when you said that.
Yeah.
I think that's an important thing to remember for all of us. And I don't know one child that hasn't got some unresolved trauma. So it kind of explains a lot. And then I really loved it when you said, feel it, name it, then move through it. I really love that.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then the last one, I had three. The relationship that is most important is the relationship with yourself, and that's self-love. And I saw that through your whole book, that you were really working on that relationship with yourself. So those are my Post-its.
Love it.
Yeah.
Kathy, do you want to share how people can, well, first of all, is there somewhere other than Amazon that you would like people to purchase your book? I mean, if it's Amazon, if that's the place, then that's the place. But I just want to give you the opportunity to provide.
I'm so glad. You all are amazing, because I've said this before, that some people are Amazon averse, and people are like, are people Amazon averse? I'm like, absolutely. Like, nobody wants the big boot coming down. So you can get the book from, if you're an independent bookstore supporter, you can get the book from bookshop.org and have it delivered to your independent bookstore wherever you are. That is a thing. Barnes and Noble, although I hear they're a bit slow, but again, you can go to Barnes and Noble online and they will order it and have it sent to your Barnes and Noble near you. And I want to say that that's it. Otherwise, Amazon is your option. Yeah.
Perfect. And do you want to share your website or anything else, any contact information or anything with our audience?
Let's see. I am on Instagram at KE Garland. That's the name I write under. I have a blog that is quoted, kwooted.wordpress.com. I also have a personal website, kegarland.com. And do I have other? I'm on Twitter, X, whatever it's called. It's still at kegarland.com. And I think that's about it. Yeah. But I mean, I'm on Instagram pretty actively. So.
Yeah. Thank you. And I just want to let the audience know that Kathy is the first person to ever feature our podcast in an article. She gave us some press, and it was such a lovely article. We're so grateful for that. Thank you for the support. And I love what you said about our podcast too.
You're welcome. Yeah. I meant every single word. And you all are just as pleasant and lovely in person. Well, virtually.
Thank you. It's been so fun having you here. You're a lovely stand-in lemonette for our beloved Melissa.
Thank you. Do I get a t-shirt though?
Yeah.
We don't even have t-shirts, but I think we should have t-shirts. Well, okay. Thank you everybody for listening. As usual, you can find us online at 5lemonslaughing.com, on Instagram at 5lemonslaughing. We're also on Facebook and YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts. So we thank you. Go out and listen or read Kathy's book. It's really amazing. And we'll see you next week.
Have a great week.